She stood very still, almost like a shadow. Only her heavy breathing showed she was alive. Then footsteps came softly from the distance. It was Maya, a young 18-year-old girl with tired eyes and a small frame. She was holding a clay water pot tightly in her hands. Her feet were bare, her steps slow and careful as she made her way down to the stream. Her heart was beating fast. She looked left and right several times, afraid of what might be hiding in the shadows, unknown to her that someone was actually there. At home, her stepmother had shouted at her earlier that night, "Maya, if you don't go and fetch water this minute, don't sleep in my house." "Lazy girl," Maya had pleaded. "Mama, it's late. Please, I will go early in the morning." But the woman slapped her hard across the face. "Go now. If you like, let the river spirits carry you away. I don't care." So Maya, with tears in her eyes, carried her pot and walked into the night. The road was quiet, too quiet. Even the crickets seemed to have gone to sleep. The tall tree swayed gently in the wind, making soft sounds that frightened her even more. When she got to the riverbank, she knelt down and dipped her pot into the water. Her hands were shaking. She looked around, but she saw no one. The dark forest surrounded her like a cage. The water pot filled slowly. The sound of water entering the pot echoed in her ears. She whispered to herself, "Please, God, protect me. Let me finish quickly." When the pot was full, she lifted it carefully onto her head. Her hands trembled. Her heart beat faster. She began to walk away from the stream. Then, suddenly, a sharp, wicked laughter filled the air. Maya froze. The laughter sounded close, too close. She turned slowly, her heart almost jumping out of her chest. And there, behind the bushes, she saw the old woman. The old woman stepped out slowly, her eyes glowing faintly red. Her lips spread into a wider smile. "Good evening, my daughter," she said in a voice that was dry and cracked, like someone who hadn't spoken for years. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She could not even scream. Her pot slipped off her head and crashed to the ground, breaking into pieces. Water splashed around her feet. The old woman began to laugh again, loud, long, and frightening. Then she dipped her hand into a small calabash hanging around her neck and blew white powder into the air. The powder spread quickly, floating and glittering under the weak moonlight. Before Maya could move or run, the powder covered her face completely. She gasped, blinked, and staggered backward. Her eyes suddenly went blank. Her breathing slowed, her body relaxed, and then slowly, like a sleepwalker, she turned away and began to walk into the bushes. The old woman stood where she was, still smiling. "Yes," she whispered. "Go deeper, deeper into the forest." Maya walked on barefoot, her wrapper draking against the grass. Her pot was broken behind her, but she didn't even notice. Her face was empty. Her eyes were lost. She walked deeper and deeper into the dark, as if an invisible hand was pulling her. Branches brushed against her arms. Thorns tore her wrapper, but she didn't feel a thing. The old woman watched her disappear into the thick bushes. Then, with a satisfied grin, she raised her head and began to laugh loudly again. Her laughter echoed across the river, bouncing off the trees. Then, suddenly, she stopped. Her face began to change. Her wrinkled skin stretched and smoothed. Her bent back straightened. Her gray hair turned black and shiny. Within seconds, the scary old woman had transformed into a much younger woman, into Maya's stepmother. She looked around quickly, checking if anyone was watching. Her breathing was heavy, her eyes darting left and right. When she was sure the place was empty, she wrapped her shawl tightly around herself and began walking home fast, her feet hitting the ground softly but urgently. She didn't know that someone had seen everything. High up on one of the palm trees near the river, Behar, the village thief, sat quietly with his jaw dropped. Behar was a young man known in the village for stealing yams and palm fruits from people's farms. That night he had climbed the palm tree, hoping to cut some bunches to sell in the morning. But what he had just witnessed made him forget about the palm fruits completely. His eyes were wide open. His mouth hung loose. He could not believe what he had just seen. He whispered softly, "Christ, so Maya's stepmother is the old woman. She's a witch." He watched her until she disappeared into the dark road leading back to the village. Behar stayed on the tree for a few more minutes, shaking from fear. Then, when he was sure she was gone, he climbed down slowly, his hands trembling when his feet touched the ground. He took a deep breath, looked in the direction she had gone, and then turned toward the forest path where Maya had disappeared. He hesitated for a moment. His mind said, "Run home." But his heart said, "Follow Maya before something bad happens." He chose to follow his heart. He began to run after her, calling softly, "Maya, Maya, where are you?" No reply. The night was still. The forest looked darker. He walked carefully, pushing branches aside, his eyes scanning every shadow. "Maya, can you hear me?" he called again. But there was only silence. He followed the trail of crushed grass and broken twigs that showed where she had passed. His heartbeat was loud in his ears. He whispered to himself, "What kind of thing did I just see? A woman turning into another person?" He kept walking deeper into the dark. The forest seemed endless. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the cry of an owl made him jump. He thought about going back, but he remembered the way Maya had looked. The powder on her face, the way she walked without knowing. He couldn't leave her like that. He continued walking, his voice trembling as he called again, "Maya." But still, no answer. Only the sound of the night, only the soft whisper of the wind. He stopped for a moment and looked up at the sky. The moon had come out again, lighting the forest a little. He took a deep breath and moved forward. His eyes searched everywhere between trees, behind rocks, into shadows. Maya was gone. Then far away he thought he heard something move. He turned quickly and whispered, "Maya." But what he saw made his heart skip. There was no one, only a blue cloth torn and hanging on a branch the same wrapper Maya had been wearing. Behar's hands started shaking. He bent, picked up the cloth, and held it close to his chest. "Oh no," he whispered. "That witch has done something bad." He looked around again, but the place was empty. He could still smell the strange powder in the air. It had a sweet but bitter scent that made him dizzy. He knew he had to leave the forest before it was too late. As he turned to run back toward the village, a soft sound came from behind him like someone breathing heavily. He looked back, his eyes wide. Nothing. He didn't wait to check again. He ran as fast as his legs could carry him, holding the torn wrapper tightly. When he finally reached the end of the forest, he stopped to catch his breath. His chest rose and fell quickly. Sweat covered his face. He looked back one last time. The forest was quiet again, as if nothing had ever happened, he whispered. "Tomorrow, everyone in the village must know what I saw." Then he began to walk home slowly, still shaking, still holding Maya's piece of wrapper, unaware that the real horror was only beginning. That night was long, quiet, and strange. Even the wind blew differently. The crickets chirped softly, as if they too were whispering about what had happened by the river. Behar the village thief tossed and turned on his old raffia mat, unable to sleep. His heart beat fast as he remembered the scary old woman's laughter and how she had turned into Maya's stepmother right before his eyes. He tried to convince himself that maybe it was just his imagination, but when he touched the piece of cloth he found near the bushes, fear ran through his body again. He sat up quickly, sweating. "No," he whispered to himself. "That was not my imagination. I saw it with my eyes." The image of Maya walking into the dark bushes like someone under a spell wouldn't leave his mind. He thought of going back to the river, but fear gripped him. What if the old woman returned? What if she saw him? What if she turned him into something terrible? He sat in the dark until morning, thinking. As the first light of dawn touched the sky, he made up his mind. He couldn't keep quiet anymore. Someone had to know. The next morning, the sun had barely risen. When Behar reached Maya's compound, the air was heavy with worry. He could already hear voices before he even got close. Maya's father, a tall, hard-working farmer named Bernard, was sitting on a low stool outside the hut, surrounded by neighbors. His face looked pale and tired. "Please, has anyone seen my daughter?" he asked again, his voice shaky. "My wife said she went to fetch water last night and never returned." "No, Bernard, we haven't," one of the neighbors replied sadly. "Maybe she slept over at her friend's place." Bernard shook his head. "Maya doesn't do such things. Something is wrong." Just then, Behar walked in, looking uneasy. Everyone turned to stare at him. He wasn't liked much in the village because of his stealing habits. People often chased him away from their farms and houses. "Behar, what are you doing here?" one man asked suspiciously. Behar swallowed hard. "I came to see Bernard," he said quietly. Bernard stood up slowly. "What do you want?" Behar looked around nervously. "Please, I need to talk to you alone." The neighbors exchanged glances but stepped aside. Behar led Bernard to a corner behind the hut. His hands were shaking. What is it? Bernard asked impatiently. Behar's voice dropped. I saw your daughter last night near the river. Bernard's eyes widened. You saw Maya? Where is she now? That's what I came to tell you, Behar said, looking frightened. She went to fetch water, but there was an old woman there hiding behind the bushes. I saw her laughing like a witch. Then she blew some kind of powder into Maya's face. After that, Maya began to walk into the bushes like someone who was lost. I tried to call her, but my voice refused to come out. Then the old woman turned into your wife. Bernard stepped back as if he'd been slapped. What are you saying? I swear, Behar cried. I saw it with my eyes. Your wife turned into herself again and ran away. Look, he pulled a torn piece of cloth from his pocket. I found this where Maya entered the bushes. Bernard took the cloth slowly. His eyes filled with tears. It was Maya's. He recognized it immediately. His hands shook as he held it. But then he shook his head firmly. No, my wife can't do that. She's not evil. You're lying, Behar. Everyone knows you're a thief. Maybe you took my daughter. Behar stepped back, hurt. I'm not lying this time, he said softly. Please don't tell your wife what I said. But you must look for Maya in the forest. She's not safe. Bernard didn't answer. He turned and walked away, still holding the piece of cloth. By afternoon, Bernard gathered a few of his hunter friends. They were brave men who knew every part of the forest. He told them everything except the part about his wife. He only said that a man saw Maya walking into the forest and never coming back. The hunters nodded. We will find her, one of them said confidently. They set off with torches, machetes, and bows. The forest was thick and dark, filled with strange sounds. They called her name repeatedly. Maya, Maya. Only the rustling leaves answered them. They searched under trees, beside streams, and inside old huts used by hunters. The day grew hotter, and the forest seemed endless. Still, they didn't give up. Hours passed, and just as they were about to rest, one of the hunters noticed something strange. A small hut stood quietly among tall bushes, almost hidden. No one had ever seen it before. The door was locked with a strong rope. He called the others. Come quickly. They ran to the hut and listened. Inside they could hear a fainted sound, someone breathing weakly. The lead hunter didn't waste time. He raised his machete and cut the rope. The door creaked open. Inside, lying on the floor, was Maya. Her eyes were open but blank. Her dress was torn, her hair scattered, and she didn't even seem to know where she was. Maya, the hunter shouted, rushing in. He gently lifted her up and placed her over his shoulder. We found her. They all shouted for joy and ran back toward the village. By the time they reached the village, it was already evening. The people gathered as they saw the hunters returning. Children stopped playing. Women left their cooking and men ran out from their huts. When Maya's father saw her, he fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. My child, my daughter, he cried. Thank you, God. He rushed forward and hugged her tightly. But Maya just stood there quiet and lost. She didn't blink, didn't smile, didn't even talk. The crowd watched in silence, some whispering that she had been bewitched. And then something strange happened from inside the house. Her stepmother came out. The moment she saw Maya, she screamed so loudly that everyone jumped. No, no, it's not possible, she shouted. She tore her clothes and began to run toward the back of the house, like someone gone mad. Everyone stared in confusion. Why is she running? One of the women whispered. Maya's father turned to look at his wife, who had now disappeared behind the house. He turned back to Maya, and that was when Maya blinked for the first time. Her eyes cleared, and she fell into her father's arms, crying loudly. Papa! The crowd gasped in relief. Maya was back to herself again. Her father hugged her tighter, his own tears falling freely. I will never let you go again, he whispered. I promise to protect you with my life. I have always loved you so much. The reason she had been so pained. That night, the whole village gathered in Bernard's compound to thank the gods for bringing Maya back safely. But deep inside Bernard's heart, he could not stop thinking about what Behar said. Could it be true? Was his wife behind all this? No one ever saw her again after that night. She disappeared into the forest and was never found. Behar, on the other hand, changed his ways. He stopped stealing and began helping people on their farms. He told everyone he learned that doing evil only brings sorrow. As for Maya, she never went near the river at night again. She lived quietly, helping her father, smiling again like she used to. But sometimes late at night, she would hear the faint sound of a woman laughing from the forest. The same devilish laugh she heard that night, and her heart would tremble because some secrets once open never really die. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more beautiful stories.